Hi, I just wanted to put this video out today because I posted a short video on the Mathemagic channel about my daughter Ayana, who is 8 years old and she is learning her powers of 2. And the question was a legitimate one from one of the students that I teach math to. Why? And it's a totally fair question. Am I turning her into a memorizing math monkey? As an educator, do I favor facts over comprehension? What's the value? Of course, we have to keep this in context, which is as we try to get better at math, does that make any sense, or is there a point to it? So today I'd like to try and show you why it doesn't just have value, but I would go even further in saying that not knowing your powers of 2 is an immense time waster. And so I feel that these are not just helpful, but absolutely necessary. So first, let's talk about powers of 2 and what they are. So we can just start with 2 times 2, which is 4, and then 4 times 2, which is 8, and 8 times 2, which is 16. And if we keep doubling these numbers, we get this sequence: 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024. These are the powers of 2. So it's a little bit like cells dividing through mitosis in biology, or the number of megabytes that you have in your computer. You might have seen the game 2048 as well. And if you think of binary systems, they all operate in powers of 2. So it's a pretty frequent calculation in the world of coding, and engineering. Now back to why this is important. Again, this is in the context of math. So if we look at student number 1, which is sitting an IGCSE paper and comes to the end of a question like this, 2 to the power 6 equals question mark. And inevitably, they'll start multiplying it out until eventually they find 64. Maybe they'll make a small error and find 54, or stop too early at 32. This has just cost them a bit of time instead of just knowing what the result is. Now, if we look at student 2 here, and student 2 sees 2 to the power 6, confidently answers 64 and moves on with a beaming smile, because they took a smart step and they know they got the answer 100% correct. So let's say our student's a little bit more advanced now and studies logarithms in base 2, maybe in high school. And facing this question, log in base 2 of 1024 equals question mark, which really is something along the lines of which power of 2 is 1024. And they'll do well knowing that it is 2 to the 10th power. So that's how logarithms work. But it would be very helpful, right? So there's also a pile of famous numbers that you gain from knowing your powers of 2. So 2 cubed, for example, which is 8. 4 cubed, which is actually 2 to the power 6, which is 64. 16 squared, which is 2 to the power 8, which is 256. And 8 cubed, which is 2 to the power 9, which is 512. Actually, this makes a lot of sense because 4, 8, and 16, they're all powers of 2. So it makes sense that when you square them or when you cube them, that's also a power of 2, right? So actually, it's going to help you in a bunch of topics, and it's going to help you to make connections in your mind that way. And I really believe that the more connections that you have in your mind, the easier it is to understand numbers, and not just that, but to remember numbers, right? Because remembering numbers is difficult. So in this sense, you don't really have to remember them, but you have to understand them. So it'll help you with exponents, logarithms, square roots, factorizations, Pythagoras theorem, quadratic equations, and so many more topics. It'll help you to just be faster and more accurate in general. Also, kids like to feel smart. So this feels like taking a smart step, which makes you feel good and makes you all warm and fuzzy inside while you're practicing math. So now, how do we learn them? So first, I would encourage you to learn the sequence. This is how my daughter learned powers of 2. It doesn't take too long. If she managed to do it and she's 8 years old, so can most people. So you keep doubling numbers until you get 1024. So you get this sequence: 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024. And then you can divide the numbers by 2, so you can go back to the beginning. So you can go 1024, 512, 256, 128, 64, 32, 16, 842. Once you nail the sequence, I would encourage you to place a mental marker in your mind. That means try and remember that 2 to the power 5 is 32. Just try and remember that. Now let's assume that you remember, after we've just said it, that 2 to the 5 is 32. And if you know the sequence, then you will know that 2 to the 6 is the next one along, which is 64. Or you can also figure out that 2 to the power 4, which is the one right before that, is 16. So that's placing 32 in your mind. Now, similarly, if you were to place 1024 in your mind, you could imagine that the number right before that is the one before in the sequence, which would be 512. So that's 2 to the power 9. And that the one after that, 2 to the power 11, would be 1024 times 2, which is actually 2048. So 1000 plus 1000 is 2000, 24 plus 24 is 48. So it's not in our sequence right now, but we can figure it out. So yes, powers of 2 are a must, absolutely foundational as the times tables. I would even go so far as to say that for any aspiring math queen or little algebra, they are absolutely essential. So they're super easy to learn and very, very useful. So you can go and watch my daughter Ariana's video if you'd like to see her practice or to see how she does them. And so next time that your child sees the power of 2 in math class or at school, they won't run away. They should feel pretty good about it. Voila. Have a great day.